So, welcome back.
Yep. Now that we've seen a bit about the UAVs in Singapore, let's discuss a bit on the people behind the UAVs. Tracy also spoke to some of the men behind the machines. Let's take a look at this clip.
Sorry, Major Lim, can you tell me a little bit about how having this mini UAV is a lot more beneficial for the troops on a micro level than compared to the UAV?
Right, I can see that this class of UAV does enhance the survivability of the troop itself, because it does give the added advantage for the troops to actually see beyond the hill on aerial surveillance, as well as reduce the risk of being detected by the enemy. That actually enhances survivability in the way he conducts business.
What do you mean by survivability? Is it just because you can send a plane where it's too dangerous for a man, or what? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, in terms of if you need to operate into the enemy held territory, this area is usually infested with the enemy itself. So to actually pick up the targets or the target of interest that of concern to the high HQ, what the soldier does is that the reconnaissance trooper will make use of this UAV to actually fly over the targets. That itself, he is actually away from the target of interest, and that itself also away from the enemy. So he's not being seen by the enemy per se, but he can actually pick up the target of his choice.
The difference in sight between actually a regular scout and the UAV would be? The
human observer only can pick up a 2D and is very limited by certain terrain, whereas this actually gives the guy a 3D effect on the ground, and you need a trained eye to actually see what is the bird eye view on the ground. With this system, they have a very good camera that actually can pan in and zoom in for the target of my choice.
Can you give me one example where in what scenario would it actually work better?
Well, in the case of if I can refer you to the hill just right in front, if the enemy is deploying in the hilltop and towards the middle of the positions and towards very close to the tree line, what the human observer does without this mini, he have only possibly able to pick up certain enemy positions, basically from a limited angle and a low angle. As if you are given the choice to deploy this mini UAV by itself, it actually can fly over target and observe the weapon position, or be it a position that I can't actually see from the low ground.
Other than being able tactically to actually see targets in a 3D level, what other benefits can it provide? Does it actually save time as well?
Well, this system, because of the ease of operation, it actually just need 2 persons to operate within half an hour. Actually, can get this mini UAV airborne and go into the area of target that I want. It does also give the team the flexibility to redeploy to another area of interest. That actually increase the way we conduct business, and obviously I don't have to commit too many human eyes on the ground or human observer on the ground to do the same task, whereas I can actually operate with this class of UAV to actually see far and see further.
But how does this compare? You were saying also eliminating the troop from the ground. Does that mean that you don't need the scout anymore?
Well, this system actually complements what the current scout trooper is operating, but again, it does have this. It does give the scout the added advantage of seeing far, so it can't replace a human per se. But I still need the ground troop on the ground to look out for physical target that certainly that's hiding beneath certain hidden terrain.
Like what, for example?
For example, if you need to fly over very vegetated kind of terrain, I can't really pick up the target of my choice because it's covered by a lot of tree, a lot of foliage, and certain targets that is of specific to certain, for example, a certain location which infested with enemy, and I can't come in because of they have also the enemy also have some observation means they can actually detect me. So I'm actually standing a distance away, but actually I can see the target from a bird eye view.
But we were chatting a little bit earlier, and you were also saying that when you in the past, a scout would actually have to take time to go into enemy territory to see what is happening on the ground, to report back, and then go back to a safe area before support fire can go in. Can you tell us a little bit about how this little plane now can actually help in this aspect?
Okay, the usage of to enhance this mini-class UAV itself, what the trooper can actually fly over a target of interest, of which I can allow me to pick up targets whereby it's beyond certain tree lines, and actually allows me to actually give a report back to the HQ. Then I can actually make some call for some kind of fire onto the enemy itself. So, and also the trooper don't have to stay too close to the target of being hit by own friendly forces when the fire is called upon the enemy.
Okay.
Okay, welcome back. I think one thing very interesting is all these people that are behind, the UAVs, because it's all it's UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, but it always takes a human hand to work it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at the video just now, it's only a couple of guys. But if you're looking at the bigger ones, it takes a few more people.
Yep.
Basically, you need somebody who's manning the camera.
Yep.
And somebody who is flying the plane. And imagine you have to fly a plane and you're not there. There are advantages and disadvantages kind of stuff. So say you're flying the plane and you need to go to the gents or something. At least if you're doing it remote, you can ask, okay, your standby or your
you can go to the...
Whereas if you're flying an F-16 or something, you can't say, hey, I need to go and take a piss now or something. Okay.
So I mean, it's easier so because you sort of don't get in harm's way and you can just basically do what you want. But what are there UAVs that need like 4 or 5 man teams and all that?
Usually, from what I understand, it depends on the purpose. If it's for reconnaissance, you need somebody that flies the plane and then somebody that operates the camera. That's about it.
Okay.
Very interesting. I think we have some more comments. I wonder if Stark Industries make UAVs. If they do, I'm sure it will look sexier, plus have a cool name. Papa Chip says, is a UAV loaded with weapons still called a UAV? And Singapore Capo said, it looks great in Australia, but how do these kind of UAVs work in urban environments like buildings? I've seen on Future Weapons some mini helicopter type UAVs that can go inside buildings. I think to address questions like these, Amanda...
That's right. I actually met up with Dr. Bernard Loo from the Institute of Defence and Strategic Studies. And he told me more a lot about the UAVs that are used in Singapore. So maybe we can take a look at it.
What are the different classes of UAVs and their various uses?
UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. These are basically, if you like, model aircraft with engines and with which you can then manipulate remotely. Most UAVs tend to be used for reconnaissance purposes, although increasingly we are starting to see what we call UCAVs, unmanned combat aerial vehicles, in UAVs that have armaments and can therefore be used to identify and attack a specific target. UCAVs typically are used not for air-to-air combat but for air-to-ground combat, destroying things like tanks and buildings and stuff like that. But the UAV is typically something that is used primarily for reconnaissance purposes. The reason for this is that For an aerial reconnaissance mission, what you want is a platform that can linger over the target area for a long time. The problem with that, however, is that it therefore means that your air platform comes under increased risk of enemy fire, which is why a manned reconnaissance platform tends to be something considered highly risky. The pilot of that vehicle comes under higher risk of having his aircraft shot down. Unmanned vehicles, therefore, were one particular solution to this kind of problem. The second thing about unmanned vehicles is that they're not small, they're fairly large, but they're still significantly smaller than manned aircraft. And it therefore means that they tend to have a smaller radar signature, and they are therefore harder to detect on radar. It's not that they are invisible or stealthy per se, it's just that they are very, very small in comparison to other combat aircraft. The third reason for using unmanned aerial vehicles for reconnaissance is that in a reconnaissance mission, not only are you required to loiter over the target area for a long time, you typically don't want to be flying at very, very high speeds. In other words, your aircraft, it tends to be fairly slow, which again increases exponentially the risk factor to the pilot of the aircraft. Hence, the decision to use unmanned technologies for these kinds of very high risk missions.
But apart from, say, being unmanned and not easily detected, are there any other advantages to using UAVs?
Well, first of all, they're cheap. They're relatively cheaper. I mean, it's not to say that it's not to say that you can rush out and buy one off the shelf tomorrow morning, because they'll typically cost in the realms of $1-2 million per aircraft. But nevertheless, compared to, say, an F-15 or an F-16, UAVs are significantly cheaper, which therefore means you can produce, in theory, larger numbers of them, right? And then there's, of course, the what I said earlier on, things like pilot safety, greater mission success. All these things come together to make the UAV a very attractive option for air forces, particularly in the reconnaissance role.
Mm-hmm. So we often hear of UAVs being used in like open spaces, but how does it function like in an urban environment? Like, can a signal be lost because we have so many broadband signals, handphone signals, things like that?
The contamination of airwaves is an increasing problem. Modern society is such that all of us have cell phones, and all these cell phones take up a certain amount of bandwidth when it comes to the airwaves, and this is an increasing problem. Most UAVs, however, tend to be remotely piloted via satellite links. The signals that they send back to the ground operators also tend to travel via satellite links. So this then cuts through the problem of urban terrain, where you might expect screening or blockage of radio wave propagation. So that's essentially not a problem.
So, like, if a terrorist plans to hijack it, like using a remote control sound, that's not possible, is it?
It is always theoretically possible. All the terrorist really needs to do is to be able to identify the specific frequency that this particular UAV is being controlled by, and if he's able to then jam that particular signal and substitute it with his own signal, he can, in theory, seize control of that UAV. That having been said, what's the UAV? How good is the UAV thereafter? It's typically something that doesn't carry a lot of fuel. A UAV, technically speaking, doesn't carry any munitions. So even if he were to fly that UAV into a side of a building, for instance, there will be an impact visually, but how significant will the damage be? My sense is it's probably not going to be very significant in terms of the damage to the building that such an event would bring about.
Mm-hmm. So can the UAV be like shot down by the enemy?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, it's a very slow aircraft. It loiters over the target area, and the target area typically tends to be as we say, it tends to be called a target-rich environment. In other words, there are many enemy formations and personnel around the place, and any one of them, in theory, can shoot down a UAV. It also depends on the altitude in which the platform is operating in. Some of them tend to operate at low level, but some of them tend to operate at very high altitudes, which therefore makes them relatively immune to ground fire. Those that tend to operate at lower altitudes then come under the greater risk of ground fire, and because they're small and because they're fairly slow, this increases the risk that they will be shot down. The mitigating factor, of course, is their size. They tend to be fairly small. Wingspans of about several meters, body lengths of about a couple of meters. This doesn't make for a very large target. Then, of course, there's this whole new range of technologies that we call the MAVs, the micro aerial vehicles, which are really like the model aircraft that your brother or your boyfriend would every once in a while bring out to the field and play around with. Those are literally palm-sized platforms that would be almost impossible for anybody to shoot down.
So, what kind of technology will be able to shoot down a UAV?
At the end of the day, actually, it's something fairly simple, a bullet. If it's low level, if it's flying at a low enough altitude that it can be engaged by a soldier on the ground with a rifle, that theoretically can shoot it down. And there are cases where UAVs have been shot down by enemy fire. So it's not impossible. It's not immune to fire. It's just that its small size mitigates the risk of it being shot down by ground fire.
Okay, very interesting. I think it's very enlightening how much Dr. Bernard Loo actually knows about the UAV.
Actually, I was wondering whether you should have asked this question. You're saying how hard is it to shoot down a UAV? What happens if you got like one UAV meeting another UAV?
Yeah.
Then you need two people.
And
then you got like enemy UAV against your enemy UAV. Who's gonna win? The guy who has more practice on his Sony V or
no, but you were saying that it's a lot to do with practice, right? Because the person that controls it, I mean, it's basically like a remote control, playing with an RC car, but doubly hard. You were saying because
you're not there. You're removed from the element. So it's like you got your especially for being a pilot already, you need like so many years of training. Yeah. So you've got your cross airs and all the atmospheric stuff. Yeah. that you need to be concerned about and the various gauges that you're looking at. And now you're like somewhere else, like 3 blocks away or even further. How are you gonna?
And like the UAVs also like technically, Dr. Loo was saying that, different air spaces and, the air is basically very contaminated also. So, but when you're flying, you're basically surveying downwards, You don't really see what's going to happen like on top. Do you? Are there UAVs that... Can you flip over and see what's on top? Or...
As the doctor said, theoretically that's possible. But I think the camera is positioned in such a way that you can, when you're looking downwards, you can also tilt it upwards so that you can see what's going around.
So it's 180 degrees.
Yeah, it's 180 degrees. It's basically a bubble underneath. The same with any spy plane. The camera can tilt up, forward, backwards, and 360 degrees.
Very interesting. Amanda, any questions? Okay, we're going to go for a short break. Amanda's going to have a lot of questions later. But we are going to be coming back and talking about the future of warfare. Bye.